usually worry about things like that, but they're kind of, when they get too long, then it's hard to fret the notes. So found a stash of emery boards and trying to clean up my act before playing through the tune, which I will do momentarily while I read the weather report and see who's here. Is that tomorrow? I thought it was next week. I think it's next week. Is it tomorrow? I know it's not at 1 a.m. I'll have to check on that. I do know I'm doing a class for them. It's nothing you guys don't know. But feel free to come on down. It should be pretty fun. I haven't done anything with those guys in a while, so I'm looking forward to it. I apologize for doing maintenance here. I just got back from Savannah yesterday. The Dauphin is officially installed at an institution of higher learning, so we'll see how that goes. He's pretty enthused about it. And I was shocked to discover that the weather in Savannah is better than the weather in Austin. Who knew? The vocal and the video are not syncing. We can't have that. Let me know if this is happening to everybody or just to Rob. We can't have that happening for Rob because he's brand new. If I'm not mistaken. We have to show him a good time here at the live stream. That's weird. Thank you, David. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, boy. Well, let me, gosh, I don't know. Let me reboot here. Though they do seem in sync. Okay. Mixed reviews. Okay, make sure, gosh, I always forget to remind people. Make sure that you click through to the Watch on YouTube link, the little button inside the window on the web page, on the Fretboard Confidential web page with the lesson. Make sure you click through. Also, there is a version 1.2 of the PDF. I fixed a couple of typos, and this is so embarrassing. I left some work notes in version 1.1. I forgot to, I had some in-progress notes to myself that I forgot to take out of the final PDF. So there's a collectible for you if you happen to still have that one. But I'm hoping you'll just delete it and download version 1.2, which is slightly more accurate. Were only a couple of little things I had to fix as far as I can tell. Okay, so let's get started. Soulstice. Today we're going to look at the improvisation. We're going to start by looking at just some scale materials, and then a model solo, some permutations, a model solo built out of permutations, and then a model solo that incorporates some moving bass lines. For measures 1 through 8, I have repurposed the permutations from Ides of March to sort of give you that overlap, so that you can see how the same material applies to these two different tunes. Ides of March is a 12-bar blues in E, and Soulstice is 16 bars. The first 8 bars follow the same format as a 12-bar blues, and then the back half goes into a different kind of B section. So the first 8 bars are just blues, and so we're going to look at how to I just repurpose the material so you could see it at work in a different song, which is something that several people expressed interest in. So here's the tune. I'll play through a version of Soulstice, and then we'll get into the lesson material. Okay, so let's get into the lesson. It looks like the sync is better now, so that's good. And it doesn't look like we have a ton of people on, so that's good too. We should have time for plenty of questions if you got them, questions and digressions and all that. So here are the scale materials. So basically, let's start off with just pentatonic material, right? E minor pentatonic scale, just looking at it in the most concise way possible, in the way that you would use it over a steady bass, which is starting on the 4th string and working your way up as far as the high string in open position with the root, the flat 3rd, 4th, 5th, flat 7, root, and flat 3rd. These are the available notes. But we can also use notes of the major pentatonic in the same area. The root, the 3rd, the 5th, the major 6th, the root, and the major 2nd, which up here you might think of as the 9th. And once you know those two things, you can think of them in terms of, well, what if I took sort of the E minor pentatonic sound in this register from the root up to the 5th? And what if I added in the notes in orange? Those are the major notes, the major 3rd and the major 6th from the major pentatonic scale added into the E minor pentatonic notes. So here's root, flat 3, 4, and 5. Those are the notes that are written in black. And then in orange, we got major 3rd here and 6. And you can hear right away that's got kind of a swing or a jump blues feel. If we just had minor pentatonic and we add in the major 3rd and the major 6th, gives you all that. And up on the top 2 strings, here's the 5th and the flat 3rd, and the root and the flat, the 5th and the flat 7, and the root and the flat 3rd. So just trying to look at a little bit of it at a time, and then if we add in the major 6th here in orange, right, from the major scale, major pentatonic scale, and then the 2nd up here from the major pentatonic, and then the major 3rd. Again, we get like much more of a swing or jump blues kind of sound. Still bluesy. Excuse me, but you can see that you start to get all of that stuff that starts to make it sound a little jazzier, a little more sophisticated, a little less down home. You can kind of pick and choose what you want to have in there. Almost get that sort of Grant Green sort of stuff going on. So then, when we get to the 4 chord, the 5 chord, and then the B section with the C sharp 7 and the C7 to the B, right? That covers all the chords. So on the 4 chord, we can look at, well, what do these pentatonic notes mean over an A chord? If we just stick to E minor pentatonic, what does that mean when we put an A in the bass? It's that thing I've mentioned before about like thinking of it like a, an old school animation where like, Fred Flintstone is running away and, you see all these mountains going by him. It's the background that's changing, and Fred is just doing the same thing all the time. So we can think of that like shifting the background from an E root, and in this ridiculous analogy, my pentatonic scale is Fred Flintstone and my E are the mountains going by, right? And so if we put an A in the bass, same figure out in front, same minor pentatonic scale, but with an A in the bass now, these notes mean something different. This is now, down here. This is now the 5th, the flat 7, and the root of A, and this is the major 3rd, and this is the flat 7 and the 5th. We want to avoid this note of the E minor pentatonic scale. We want to avoid this flat 7 because it's the sus, the A7, it's the sus4 of the A chord, and so we want to hear more of the major third. So we can hear these notes over E, and we can hear them over A. And by the same logic, we can look at a B7 chord, and we see that not a lot of these pentatonic notes really work that great, but a few of them do. This one is now the flat 7, and then the root, and I'm calling it sharp 9, but we could also call it flat 3, and 4 and 5. So, and if you think of this as flat 3rd, you can bend it a little bit. There's your root of the B chord. And really the thing is to think about where the thirds and the roots are of the chord you're on. So if we're on E, major third and root. On the A, third and root. And on B, flat 3rd, bending up to the root. So while only really thinking about the pentatonic scale, the E pentatonic scale, major or minor, you can find a way to finesse all 3 of the important chords, the 1, 4, and 5. And then we can kind of take this approach a step further, and I've made YouTube lessons about this, talking about how putting minor pentatonic notes on top of dominant chords like the 6 or the flat 6 chord give you cool altered sounds. So if we're on C sharp, we can see that this open high string here is now the flat 3rd or the sharp 9. Here's the 4. Here's the sharp 11. This note is the flat 13. And this note is the flat 9. There's your root. There's your flat 7. The important thing is just to know that playing these blues licks on top gives you notes that sound good over the C sharp chord, even though they're just E blues licks. And that then over the C chord, we just have, this is just the major third of C. And there's sharp 11, and there's 5, and there's 9. So these notes here on top are now doing, you can kind of just go through this and do this by ear, but if you're wondering why it works, it's that the blues notes on top over a C sharp chord give you these funky altered sounds, which then sound a little more resolved here on the C chord because they're giving you natural 9 and 5 and 3, and then they become all funky again when you're on the C chord. Right, this is flat 13, sus4, and sharp 9, and then root over the B. So the simple thing to think is just, well, blues notes, E minor pentatonic notes, they sound good over the B section, but this is kind of why they do. So let's have a model solo, right? This is just going to use steady bass, nothing fancy, and just blues licks on top. And you can see right away, this is right out of the Ides of March lesson material. We've even got that rocking between 1 and 5 in bar 3 here. So this is what the model solo sounds like. 1, 2, 3. Second line. Now we're going to walk up to the B section. Third line. Fourth line. Let me try to put that fourth line. I didn't play it quite like I wrote it out. One more time. So, really simple, just you can see there's a lot of repetition in the B section, right? It's starting off. Again, just if you took the bass out, that whole second half of the solo is just little call and response licks. So just on the top two strings, ba, 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 and then it's going to repeat that opening phrase, but go down, straight down the scale. One more time with that same. Basically repeats this earlier phrase, right? So now we're getting, overall, we're getting like an A, B, A kind of thing. And then when the chords finally change, we're just borrowing one major note to get a little more color in. So this is very composed in the sense that, you know, it's not just like noodling, it's very much like little call and response phrases over 2 bars, which then add up to bigger call and response phrases. So that's a way to look at things. And I'm sure you heard this is like straight out of Ides of March here. So, of course, let's have some permutations, some different ways to play through bars 1 through 4, bars 5 through 8, bars 9 through 12, and bars 13 through 16. And again, I took these permutations straight out of Ides of March for the first 8 measures. So this line here is straight from the model solo. And then 3 variations on that. I should play these slower. Here's the second. Here's line 2. Keeping that same E to B to A bass line. And then this next one, line 3. Straight down the blues scale. And one more possibility here. And then, of course, I put in the dotted lines here so you can see how you can break these up into 3 phrases, right? Short phrase leading in, answered by taking that same idea and then extending it. And then finally, an even longer idea. And since all 4 of these lines use the same architecture, you can split them all at the dotted line and create a multitude of additional licks. So for instance, we could start here on line 3, go to line 4, and then go to line 2. And there's a whole new idea, right? So lots of possibilities, and we can do the same thing with this set of licks. So that's from the model solo, and then the first possible variation, line 2. That's not quite right. Oh, they're quarter notes. What the heck? And then, of course, the walk up into the second section is going to happen at the end of measure 8. More variations. Here's line 3. And finally, line 4. Line 4 one more time. So all of these, again, they split into 3 phrases. So we could have line 2, line 3, and then finish up with, I don't know, line 1. So again, totally modular. You can build all kinds of stuff out of this. Okay, so now here's really the new part, which is what do you do about this? And I talked a little bit about it already, the idea of little call and response ideas. These will split kind of at the midpoint between measure 10 and measure 11. And we've got the descending bass line in here. So here's from the model solo. So again, the opening gets repeated here. So we're staying in the upper register here. We're descending to the low root here. Here's another way to do it. So a lot going on there. We're starting the lower register. So the bass note and the melody note are very close to each other. And then we're going up. And we're sliding. So 3rd fret notes. You're going to slide those and then land with the thumb to synchronize with landing on the downbeat here. So again, that second line. Next, we have line 3. We could have So we're coming down first. Good example of how it's just blues licks on top. But with the chords underneath, it sounds more exotic. And then the next time we're going to go up the scale. So total blues licks. The double stop on top, splitting the index and the ring finger between the third and the high string. And then the last example. So a lot of double stop stuff. Resolving with the major third down here on the third string. And then kind of a variation, right? Because first we had in measure 9, and now in measure 11 we have you can mix and match these between measures 9, 10 and measures 11 and 12. And then for these, again, we can reuse some of the material here and then end it differently over here. So here we have so there's the model version, right? Ending with this bluesy stuff over the B to C7 to B. So here we can take this lick. Oh, sorry. So taking that same low end stuff. And then here we have, again, this chord stuff on top. So this, measures 13 and 14 are repeats of measures 9 and 10 to get that same kind of A, B, A, C effect whenever you start moving these permutations around. So line 3 for the final 4 measures, hey, come on, whoops, is... Oh, dang it. Went too far. All right, so we have this repetition. And finally, oh, sorry. So some tricky stuff with the inner voices there. Anticipation stuff. So those are all the permutations, and then here is a solo built out of those permutations. Sounds like this. And hopefully it'll be fairly clear where these come from. Oh, I marked them. I didn't, whoops. I didn't put this down in the copy to keep it kind of uncluttered, but basically it tells you that For measures 1 through 4, we're using the second permutation, line 2 of that page, right? And then for measures 5 through 8, you go to that page and it's the 4th line on that page. And then for measures 9 through 12, it's the 3rd line on that page. And for measures 13 through 16, it's the 4th line on that page. So it sounds like this. Going to the 3rd line. So that's a solo built up out of all of that stuff. And finally, I know I'm just kind of like blowing through a lot of material here. I didn't realize there would actually be so much to talk about, but with a 16-bar tune, there's a lot of variations to go over. This is now basically trying to adapt some of the bass line from Ides of March on the first 8 bars to Soulstice, because Soulstice is this steady bass thing, right? And it would be nice to have some motion in the bass. So here is a model solo where we do the bass line that we isolated for the improvising in Ides of March is now applied to this solo for the first 8 bars of Soulstice. So it sounds like this. Right, so you can hear all that Ides of March stuff at the beginning. Right, going up to the 3rd in the bass. And then going to the D chord in measure 2. And then E with G sharp in the bass. F7, B7, B7 sus, and then walking up to the E over G sharp. Rocking the bass between the root and the 5th for the A chord in line 2. Going to the D7. And then E over G sharp. Up to the A. Back to the E over G sharp. And then E in the bass. And then doing the walk up. So again, in time, here's the first 8 bars. B section. Okay, so whew, that's a lot to think about. Again, you know, these reduxes, I don't know if that's really the plural of redux, but these redux lessons are just a way to kind of just go back and update some of the earlier lessons with a more thorough approach. So when I ended up recording this song, I didn't end up doing a shout chorus. I just kind of played a pretty simple version with the vamp. Did like a 5-step process, basically. Like the vamp, the tune, a solo, the tune, and then the vamp out. So that's really all I presented here. But again, it's a slightly longer tune at 16 bars. And so I didn't feel like it needed anything really fancy. And there's a lot going on just with the soloing. And just in the name of practicality, I wanted to kind of get back on schedule and finish the Soulstice Redux this month so that we could start next month, sort of like in October with next month's Redux. It turns out to be a lot of material to talk about, to do a Redux and a new tune. So we will continue this process through the end of the year. And after that, I may sort of reevaluate if this is the best way to kind of keep this material replenished, because I didn't anticipate having to talk for 45 minutes just about the material and not be able to answer questions until now. But here we are, so let's do it. Here's a comment from David. It took me a long time to grok that the final note in measure 1 is often actually the start of the lick in measure 2. Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about phrasing, and I think I did back. Did I do it for this lesson or? No, well, wait a second, did I? No, I did it for Ides of March, but I didn't do it for this. Didn't talk, well, and also, Soulstice starts right on the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, and it's a rare tune of mine anyway that doesn't start with a pickup phrase, but the licks often do. So, right. And you can see that when you look at the permutations, right? Because you can see where the dotted line is. And it's almost always before, well, almost always, I say, almost always before the bar line, right? So yeah, that's a good thing to notice and to remember. Let me go full screen here because I think I'll probably end up answering some other kinds of questions that aren't tabbed out. Let's see. Here are some questions from Delphine. Out of E topic, but still jazzy digression if we've got time. Working on After You've Gone in C, as you throughout demonstrated in a live last month. I noticed your version for Indiana and Georgia and YouTube are also in C. Do you ever arrange standards with a steady bass in another key? Also, some standards seem hard to transpose to C on the guitar. The melody seems not to fit well in the open position. How do you select the appropriate tunes candidates for arranging? Okay, that is several questions, but they're all good and they're all related. If there are no, I don't want to launch into that until I know if there are any questions about Soulstice. So while I start thinking about that, if you still have a question about Soulstice, please post it, because I could easily spend the whole last 10 minutes answering this question. I'm just going to sort of tread water here for a second and see if anybody, there's like a 10-second delay out there. So I'm going to wait just a second and see. And in the meantime, tell me what you mean by C alt, Delphine, because I'm not sure what you mean by C alt. But other than that, I think I can answer this question. And if I don't see any burning issues about Soulstice per se, I will go ahead and answer this question. I'm just going to read it over a bit again. Let's see. Okay. After you've got, oh yeah, I did it in C and I did it in E. And Georgia, I did in C. Well, let's see. Did I do? Oh yeah. Oh, alternating bass. Silly me. Okay. I always think of that as meaning alternate tuning. Thank you. Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions about. I don't see any questions about Soulstice, so I will try to answer this. So the question is basically, I talked about this standard after you've gone last month, playing in C with an alternating thumb, and I also do Indiana in C, and I've talked about Georgia on YouTube in C, although I don't think I did the B section for Georgia yet. And do I arrange standards with steady bass in another key? Let's see. How do you select the appropriate tunes for arranging? Yeah, okay. So I do tend to, even when I'm thinking steady bass, I have noticed a lot of times I will still want to put in the backbeat on the alternate with the alternating thumb. But I mean, standards. Let me think about this. I mean, the arrangement of Georgia. Really, I mean, I don't remember how I played it in that YouTube lesson, but in my head, I think of this as more of a steady bass kind of thing. And I wonder, I guess I did do that. I mean, you could do it that way to get the... But I also could see doing it more like... which gives it a little bit more of a swing feel in a way, but trying to move the bass every couple of bars. Really a lot like what we're doing in Ides of March and in Soulstice. But anyway. Yeah, did I do all of me in G? Yeah, so I did all of me in G because it doesn't fit in C, right? So, I mean, I'm much more comfortable soloing on it in C because I've always played it in C when I've been playing it as a standard with other people. But it's mostly that thing of looking, the key choice is governed by where does the melody sit, you know, and if you can get the melody in open position. Although I have been experimenting more with playing in closed position just to see if it can be done, and also just so that you can ultimately do it in the correct key if you're playing with other people. But I think I mentioned this recently, and I heard someone else say this first. I didn't make this idea up, but the idea that, you know, you're basically, the melody is like the singer, right? So just like you would learn how to transpose on the fly if you were a good accompanist, you know, a lot of pianists, like they can basically put a song in whatever key the singer wants it in that's good for their voice. It's almost like on the guitar, it's like, well, you know, like where does it sit for the fingers? This is the prima donna singer, basically, and they have to be comfortable, you know, these guys too, really, more of that, I guess, the left hand, the fretting hand. So yeah, so it has to, it has to be sitting in open position to work well as a fingerstyle thing. But that said, there's various places to do things. Like if you look online, you can find a version of Guy Van Duzer doing Sweet Georgia Brown, and I think he does it in D. Let's see. And he's more comfortable using bar chords. How does he do this? I don't remember. Maybe he does that. But see, I'd much rather, that makes your chords like, B7, E7, A7, D, and then let's see, second time. You're doing all this bar chord stuff. And then here, you've got to do all this for the minor part. And then that seems like a lot of work. And I hate to do everything in the same key, so I, try to move things around and do things in different keys. But in this case, I would probably do it in C, because then you get A, open strings, even when you go up the neck, D, G, C, and then when you come around, your minor chords are, it's A minor, and then you're going to E7. But, there are a few things that I do in F, and I'll experiment with F and G and A are all very similar in a way. So, Fats Waller, sit right down and write myself a letter. Works nicely in F. So that's F, but it also works in G. And when I say nicely, I mean you can play it with some open chords, you get some open strings, you don't have to go too far out of position. And I don't really feel like this is like a bar chord, right? Because this G has got the thumb in the bass and then these chord bits on top, and you've got this open E string. And you can get away with some sort of partial chords where you're just playing 3 notes. Or A. Again, big open strings on the bottom. That's, up the neck, but it's not really a bar chord. That's C#7. And that's sort of a partial solution. That's a bar chord. That's sort of a nice cheat also for F sharp 7, not really a whole bar chord. So, you know, once you're in this world, it's kind of like bar chords, but not really, and you get some open chords, so you can sort of finesse a bit of that. So all of me, yeah, same family of chords. So you can see it's all the same shapes. B7. Because this kind of standard, they all have basically the same kinds of chords. It's all these secondary dominants and dominants, minor chords, and the occasional diminished. Same cheating chords. This one's a pain in the neck. You have to kind of go up here to get this to work, which I don't like so much. And then once you're set up for the improvising, you know, it's all the same ideas. So, I mean, if you've been doing all the stuff we've been doing, except for that G chord, which is a little unfamiliar, but you know how to play on a B7 and how to play on an E7 and how to play on an A minor, right? So that's the payoff of doing all these 1-4-5 songs is you know how to play in open position now. And so if you can keep the standards in open position, it's all the same stuff, right? Big digression, but no apology required. Okay, I did miss this David Hunter question. So it's 2 o'clock. If you want to go. We'll be back at 2:30 to do the beginning of September for arranging for Ides of March. But I'm going to stick around and answer this David Hunter question. Soulstice question. Part of what is cool about it is the A9 stuff up the neck. I don't think the improv stuff goes there. Could you demonstrate something? Sure. Yes. So. Right? We're doing that. And then again in measure 5. Okay, so what's happening if you look at the E stuff, that stuff I was mentioning earlier in the lesson about overlapping the major and the minor pentatonic and giving you that jazzier sound. Here's the 9th. So there's this notion in jazz improvisation of, well, you can think of the arpeggio as root 3-5-7. But you can also think of the arpeggio as 3-5-7-9. And an arranging teacher that I had, Bill Dobbins, was like, well, 9 is just a substitute for the root. So if you start thinking of the 9 being there in place of the root, and then you're playing these blues licks and thinking of the 7 and the 9 and being sort of in this world with the major third kicking things off. If that works over E, then you can literally just take all that stuff up 5 frets. Now I just got through saying how let's look at, the notes of, let's stick to the basically the E minor and E major pentatonic scale and how they work over all of the chords. But another strategy is this kind of sequential idea of saying, well, if it works on E, then it works on A up 5 frets. And so if you want to get more of that sound of when you're soloing, then you can take that idea up the neck and be thinking 3, 5, flat 7, and 9 on E, on A, excuse me. So, and then those double stops. Now, what makes it really, what really completes the idea is the other thing you were mentioning about like always starting a little bit before the bar line. So if you're on an E, if you can use beat 4, right, so I was thinking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 to get into the next thing. So 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1. Now when you slow it down, it sounds wrong. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and but when you land, it sounds great. So any of that ninth stuff, thinking of it as 3, 5, 7, and 9, or 9, 7, 5, 3, or the double stops, or the chords, will all sound pretty convincing. So David, let me know if that's what you were talking about. And Delphine, let me know if that's what you were talking about. And anybody else, if I missed anything, let me know. And then in another 20 minutes, give or take, we will jump into the next thing. Yes, that is the thing to do. Again, it's phrasing, phrasing, phrasing. Just think about the phrasing, think about leading into where you're going so that it doesn't just sound like you're doing it right on the downbeat. It's always more persuasive. Always makes a difference. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you in just a little